Good afternoon. Hello, friends. Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Please let me know in the chat if you can see my work desk and you can hear me. That would be really helpful. That way I can adjust if I need to increase my microphone or move it closer to me, whatnot. We are going to look at the Faber Castell Albrecht Durer watercolor markers today. I've wanted these for a while, and I've been working on a really big freelance project, and I hit the halfway point and I decided to order them as a treat. And I'm really liking them. So if I can answer any questions about these, I'm happy to. I also have my Windsor Newton watercolor markers here, which I think are probably the closest thing to compare them to. So we can do a little comparison there. And that way, if you've been thinking about these markers, or maybe you bought them and you don't know what to do with them, maybe I can give you some inspiration and some information about how they are. If you have a question for me as we are creating together tonight or this afternoon, I realize I'm on East Coast, so it's 5 o'clock here. So it's probably like early afternoon everywhere else. Just type the word question in all caps. So when I look back for questions, it'll catch my eye. If you're watching the replay, I generally will group the questions together. So you can skip past those sections if you're not interested in that. So hopefully it's good for the folks here live and the folks that join us for the replay. All right. Wow. Lots of people in the chat. We're going to, I'm just going to get going here. I'm going to move this box for a second because it's casting a little bit of a shadow. So this is the first thing I did with these markers. I just got them in the mail last week. I ordered them from Blick and I paid $88 for, might have been 88 and some change, was right around there for the 30 markers, which is the full set. They are available open stock, which means you can just buy a couple colors and see how you like them before investing in the full set. But it is cheapest to get them in the sets to, you know, pay less per marker. But I figured I was going to review them as well, so I would just go whole hog and get the big set. Plus, that's a lot cheaper than they've been, so so I decided to splurge. So I took them with me to an open studio that one of my friends invited me to last weekend. And I'm like, I just want to play with these and see what I can do with just the markers. And today I added a little bit of gel pen just to bring out some highlights, but the rest of this is just the watercolor markers. And I really, really enjoyed working with them. Very vibrant, easy to mix, easy to blend. Once you draw with them, you can easily spread out the color, which is nice. And I thought the colors were really well selected and nice and vibrant, and I had no qualms. These are a Lightfast marker, so they're not going to fade on you under general conditions. And there's a brochure in there. I'm not sure if I have it in my box or if I left it on the coffee table upstairs because I was playing with them earlier today. I probably left it upstairs. Yeah, in the brochure, it does tell you how Lightfast they are, but also on the markers themselves. And I believe 3 is the highest, 3 is excellent, 2 is very good, and 1 is moderate. Is it moderate, or is it what they call it, adequately Lightfast? I can't remember. But they also have the star system on the markers themselves, which is great because who can hang on to a brochure? Not me. And yeah, I think those are the main points. I thought I saw somebody had a question, so I'm just gonna look back real quick. Grace asks, how do the Faber Castell watercolor markers do with layers? They're okay with layers. I did layer up a bit here. You can layer the marker, just use a straight marker on top of your work to get a really dark line, or you can scribble it on a palette and pick it up with a wet brush, or you can even scribble it over and soften it a little bit. You will get some lifting though. So, you know, you just gotta, most of these colors are going to lift, even though you think they stain really badly because they're so vibrant, they're so transparent, and they're able to go through a marker tip. They still will lift up. Like I ended up lifting up a bunch of the blue in that drink when I was working on it because the layers got really streaky and I was putting more on top, and then I was unhappy with the streak, so I just went over the whole thing again and everything lifted and blended out again. Let's take a look at the markers themselves. The set of 30 comes in 3 trays, and I didn't realize it when I ordered these, but in the brochure, they showed a wallet that was like a cloth wallet that had, I believe, all 30 colors in it. So I believe it's available in that format too. I didn't see that one on Blick. It's probably more expensive to have that wallet, but I thought, boy, that kind of would be nice. But these trays, they're just like a flimsy kind of thin cardboard, almost like a cardstock type material. So I don't think they would last that long, but but I like how I can kind of lay them all out and look at them. Let's swatch them together. This one is dark chrome yellow, 109. Now these numbers should correspond to the other products in the Faber Castell line. So if you have polychromos or the Albrecht drawer pencils, they should have the same number. Now, one thing I noticed when I was using these the other day was that the brush tip and the bullet tip seemed to be a lot darker. And I wasn't sure if it was because maybe they were on their end in my bag. So I made sure to take them out and lay them flat. And I do notice, I noticed on that one, the bullet tip's a little bit darker, and the bullet tip's darker on this one too. So it might just be kind of nature of the beast. So what I'm going to do is swatch these out. Then we'll pull down the color with a little bit of water so you can see how they blend. And I'm going to swatch them all out first so you get to see how they kind of, that you can move them after they've been put down. I have no affiliation with Faber Castell. I was just really curious about this product. Whoops, I want to do the scribble there. There is a little illustration on the side of the marker that says what side is the brush and what side is the bullet. But other than that, it's pretty hard to tell just right off the bat what side you're going to get. I found the caps fairly easy to remove and they snap on really well. There's no pigment information on that. I would say that's probably the biggest disappointment, is that it doesn't say what pigments are used. So you don't know if you've got a mix or if it's a single pigment color, or what you might get if you mix without just trying it. With the Windsor and Newton markers, the ultramarine blue isn't PB29 because that's a sedimentary color and it's so chunky. And also the earth tones aren't your typical earth tone pigments. They're mixes of the more transparent, smaller pigmented colors. So when you go to mix them, sometimes you get a surprise, because you might be expecting to make gray and you end up getting teal just because of the way that they've put the colors together. But the colors are really nice and vibrant. Oh, I gotta leave myself a little more space, I think. I'll go a little bit lower with the next one. I don't think you would need as many colors as you might want with colored pencils, because they blend so well. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of a little off-putting when I first used them, that the bullet tip was so much darker than the brush tip. But I don't know why that would be. I really don't understand why that would be, with them laying flat. Or maybe they just take a long time. Maybe they were stored at the store in on their end, and then it just takes a while for them to normalize. If anybody has these and they know and they want to, I had that out of order. One that helped me, that would be great. The Windsor and Newton markers do offer the pigment information on the marker, which is nice. So I would give them a kind of a little bit of a bonus point for that. But we'll compare them a little bit today. The brush tip is a fiber nib. It's fairly flexible, but I wouldn't go pressing it too much, or I think it would get a little mushy. And I think if you were using a really rough paper, then it almost felt like the arch, because I used arches for the cocktail illustration, and it kind of felt like it was a little on the rough side for these markers. So that might be something to consider if you are going to get the paper that you use to make your markers last as long as possible. They're not refillable though, so you've got to plan on buying another marker if you use one up that you really like. And I don't know how long the ink will go on these. If anybody has been using these for a long time, and I don't even know how you would really rate it, just because it's let's see, which one did I do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we're to this one. Yeah, I don't know how you'd really rate it, because how I don't know, unless you want to just like scribble a marker out to see how long it went, and who wants to do that with a expensive marker? I think they're for something. If you buy them open stock, they're $3 or just under $3 at Blick on the sets. That's a pretty color. There weren't any colors that I used that I thought, oh, I wish they didn't bother to include that one. I found them all to be very useful and mix really well. My mother gave me a hyacinth plant that's in a clear vase, and you can see the bulb and the roots and stuff. So kind of like the tulip that I did the other day. And I thought it might be fun if we need something to sketch that we could do that together. The cocktail painting took me 3 hours, so I'm not going to do that on the live stream because I think I would bore everybody, but we'll do something. Maybe a little whimsical landscape or something, just to kind of give you an idea of what you might use them for. I think they take longer to use, and maybe because I'm not used to them, than like just using your marker, like your watercolor paints. But the colors are extremely transparent and vibrant. I'll get these swatched, then I'll scroll back and look at the questions, and then we'll add water to these and see how well they reconstitute. I don't think these are actually, looking back at this today, I don't think I'm seeing as much difference between the brush tip and the bullet tip than I did on the first day that I used them. So I think it might be that they were stored on their ends at the store, and now they're finally, or maybe in the shipping truck or whatever, and now they're kind of normalizing. So that's probably a good thing. So I did notice that with my Winsor & Newton ones, because I had them in a jar and I didn't lay them out flat before I used them. So I was noticing the bullet tips were more dark. But in general, anytime you have a double-ended marker, regardless of what type of medium is in it, you want to store them flat. Keep all the ink from running down to one end. And if they're single-ended, you could store them flat, or you can store them with the tip down, as long as they're not a leaky type of marker. I usually don't swatch my supplies except for just watercolor paints, unless I'm doing a review. All right, so we'll let those just dry for a minute, and I'm going to look back for questions. All right. Oh, my goodness. You guys are chatting it up today. And it's so beautiful outside today. I had all the windows open. It's so nice. I'm just looking for the word question in all caps. So if you want to catch my eye so I can answer your question, type question in all caps. Oh, I already answered that question, so I'm going to scroll by that. Yeah, if I look back and see you've asked a question that I've already addressed, I'm just going to skip over it. Karen Campbell says she likes the Winsor & Newton ones a bit better. The nibs are nicer, but these are cheaper, so they're an excellent value because of their Lightfastness. Oh, Karen, that'll be interesting. I'll see how the nibs compare. I didn't really notice a big difference, but we can compare that too, because I have my Winsor & Newtons out. Although I don't know how fair it is, because I do have some of the new version of the Winsor & Newton ones from China versus I have some of the older French-made ones. So I can see that anyway. Okay, I guess we don't have too many questions yet. Ian asks, do they come open stock? Yes, they do. They're on Blick. I think they're around $4.60 maybe, open like individually, or they're in sets. They come out to be about $3. Grace Art Watercolors asks, is there something you can do to help prevent them drying out? I would say keep them capped up really well. Keep them away from direct sunlight and heat. Maybe put them in a plastic bag if you're worried about them drying out. I have had like a Winsor & Newton one dry out before, and I added some water to the nib and it brought it back. Arta Jules asks, do you know if the new Inktense pencils have any neutrals? I am not sure what the new 28 colors are going to be. I would think so. I believe they at windsornewton.com, they have a chart that has all 100 colors. And if you look on, there'll be like little dots that represent what set they're in. So you could look at the 100 set column and see what's in there. And if you're really familiar with the smaller sets, you could look at and see what's in all the sets there. That'd probably be what I'd recommend. I will be getting them eventually. And I think if you have the Winsor Newton markers, even if you have like any markers, you could follow along today when we do our demo part, because it doesn't, the big benefit to getting these or the Winsor Newton ones would just be if you needed the Lightfastness. If you don't need a Lightfastness, you can use Tombows. You can use a much cheaper marker. And Patricia Jung asks, what paper? I would recommend using watercolor paper or using Bristol, something with a good coating on it. So it's not going to just, like if you do this on cardstock, it's not going to blend as well because it's going to soak right in. But Bristol is really good. It's very inexpensive. Watercolor paper will work really well. Cotton watercolor paper will work the best, just nothing too rough so you don't tear up the nibs, because they are just a fiber, they're a fiber nib, like a felt tip fiber nib. Clark Fine Art, hi Angela. She asks, can you activate and move the pigment with a brush and water? Yes, and we are going to do that with our swatch in just a second. And Durwood 206 asks, how do they compare to Tombows or water-based markers, better for watercolor use? I have found that both, well, the Winsor Newton ones anyway, blend a little bit better than Tombows, but they're essentially the same animal, except these are using pigments, like your customary watercolor pigments that are light fast, whereas regular watercolor marker will use dyes that will not be light fast. But essentially, as far as using them, they're going to work about the same. Let's see, are these heavy? Not really. No, I would say they're about as heavy as any other marker. They look kind of chunky though, don't they? They look like they might be kind of big. All right, I think I am caught up. Okay, so let's add some water to these. I'm going to use a water brush. A water brush works really well for these because, you know, you're not going to be getting a ton of pigment on your brush that needs to be rinsed out. So I'm just going to make sure that's started. I got a paper towel here. All right. And this has been setting for, I don't know, whenever we started. And I'm finding this lifts up pretty well, not a lot of staining. And even if it doesn't lift up right away, it usually lifts up. It will kind of like keep on lifting on a watercolor paper, especially on a heavily sized one like the arches that I used for the cocktail painting. Oh, that orange lifted right out. I think that the bullet tips, if you wanted to have a more defined line not lift away, using the bullet end would work a little bit better because it is a harder tip and it has more pigment in it. So I think the fact that it might actually scribe and scratch the paper a little bit, kind of like if you scraped a paper with a credit card scraper or the end of a brush, I think it might even disturb the fibers of the paper and give you a little bit more of a line if you wanted to keep a line there. I'm trying to keep some of the ink undissolved just so you can see the difference between right out of the marker and then dissolve down a little bit. You can see there how we have that line still showing through even after I've added water, but here it's almost all broken up and dissolved. So that's what I mean about, like, when I was doing the cocktail painting, like under here and like under there, I wanted to have a sharper line that wouldn't completely dissolve when I blended it out with water. So I used the bullet end and that worked really well. And going in here around the crushed ice, I used the bullet end and that just helped you keep a little definition. So, whoops, I'm sorry. I'm holding that right off the edge. So as you get used to them, just like any tool, you're going to figure out what you want to do, how it's going to give you the best results and whatnot. The colors are so pretty though. I love this kind of strawberry red looking. I didn't bother writing down the colors because I'm probably never going to use a swatch again. I'll probably cut it up and put it on a handmade card or something. You can see it really well here, how I said about the scribing, how it kind of scratches the paper. Not scratches the paper like a negative thing, but just like if you want that line to be preserved. Just same on that one. Reds tend to stain anyway, so that's kind of a good example. I think these would be really nice for card makers that would like to have a little bit nicer of a watercolor marker that's going to blend easier. Because I've done some, and the same goes for the Windsor Newton ones. I did some cards where I used Bristol and I stamped, and I had I grabbed the Windsor Newton markers for some reason. I guess my Tombos were across the room, and they blended a lot better than the Tombos did on Bristol. I think they might have a little more like glycerin in them or something that keeps them from drying out quite as quickly. I want to thank Joe Maskey and Ian Jackson, two of our moderators that are helping out today. There's probably others in there that I just haven't seen. I haven't seen the and everyone that's helping. I know a lot of people they help for just because they're good people, and I do appreciate that. I miss questions when I'm trying to demo at the same time. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? There's some really pretty blues here. I don't necessarily think you need all the blues because like those two are very similar. I think that's cobalt turquoise and the phthalo blue, but they are nice. Like those two are like, well, this one's right in between that and that. I don't know if they're blending pigments, like if they would mix that color and that color to make that color, like chemically, because we don't have access to the pigment information, which is honestly the biggest complaint I have with these. It would be good to know. It would be really good to know because if you're on a budget and you just want to try a few colors, you could avoid, you could buy the single pigment ones and avoid buying the other ones until you're sure you like them. And when I bought the Windsor Newton ones, I looked at the pigment information to make sure I wasn't just buying the same thing, that I could mix. The greens are gorgeous. I'll take more questions after I'm done getting this swatch liquefied. I wanted to make sure that it was fully dry so that you could see, like, could you take time and do a sketch with the markers and then go back, or if you got interrupted like most of us do from time to time, that like you could be coloring something in or drawing directly with the markers and then come back the next day or in an hour's time and still be able to reactivate. Or sketch on the go, like maybe you're on your lunch break and you've parked next to a stream and you want to sketch a stream and then you don't have time to add water. You could do that at home later. I don't think you would run into much of an issue because I was reactivating color today on that painting I did Saturday just to, see if I could blend it around, and I didn't have any issues. I'm running out of water. I'm going to grab a different water brush. And these are the Derwent water brushes. They're my favorite water brush because they have the soft push button in the center to squeeze. So if you have strength issues, it's a lot easier to work with. They are pricey, but they're my favorites if it's in the budget. There's also a really fine tip one that comes to a nice point and also a wide. I used the cold gray, the darker one. I think it was this one right here for my shadows, and they worked really well. Worked really well for that. Actually, that's indigo. I got them mixed up when I swatched them. The indigo looks like a Payne's gray. All right, I'm going to put these on camera so you can kind of see them as they're drying. You can see if anything's changed. It's really easy to get cauliflowers and back runs with these. If that's either way, whether you like it or not, it's easy to get them. You may wish to get them or you may wish to avoid them, but they are pretty easy to get. I'll put this on those markers there to keep them at the same focus level, and I'll look back at questions. All right, Jill Barton asks, I have Koi Create watercolor brush pens. Would they work to follow along with you? Absolutely, sure. Any sort of watercolor pen. They're probably, I'm not sure if they have the liquid body like a water brush. If so, they might put out more ink quicker, but no, they'll work fine. Like I said, the only reason you want to buy these or the Windsor Newton ones is because you want Lightfastness. I wouldn't buy them for any other reason. They're nice to work with, but you can get a much similar result cheaper if you don't care about Lightfastness. Like you're working in your sketchbook and it's never going to see the light of day. Like it's never going to be hung on the wall. Let's see. Patricia Jung asks, is there a time factor when the pigment stains? I haven't noticed there to be one. I'm sure like the reds are going to stain quicker, but like I was going back in my cocktail painting and able to reactivate stuff hours later and days later. So I don't think so. I think just some colors are a little bit more prone. If you use the brush tip and you work on dry paper, like if you have a wet paper and you go in there and draw over the wet paper, I think there you'll get a little bit more chance of staining because when the paper is wet, it's more vulnerable, and you can go in there on the wet paper with that bullet tip and definitely mar the surface of the paper, and that's going to take your paint faster, and it's going to go down deep into the fibers of the paper because you break that seal of the sizing on the top. But if you're working with the markers on dry paper, you should have a long time to be able to blend them out, as long as you haven't done anything to damage that paper. Okay, Yells asked, will this project be in Critique Club? I didn't record it, so I don't have any plans to put it in Critique Club unless I re-record it. I did that away from the studio, so I don't have any footage of that one. Clark Fine Art says, it's always fun just to hang out live with you. Thank you so much. And we're gonna actually, Angela and I are gonna go paint on Thursday with another fellow viewer. So if you are local to me and you want to go paint someplace scenic with me on Thursday, just email me and I'll give you the deets. But I'm not going to broadcast it out online. I don't know. I'm sure you guys are all normal people, but you never know. But yeah, we're going to get out. It's going to be 70 in Maine. So I'm so excited to get out and paint. My husband calls us the stalker squad. Are going to go out and paint together. I'm like, if I get kidnapped, I think they'll bring me back pretty fast. Okay, Annette 4 years says the want monster is going to have to be beaten away from my door. Yeah, my want monster has wanted these for a long time, but I couldn't justify it since I had the Windsor Newton ones. But as they were starting to get dry, I'm like, I think I can justify those. Let's see. Marilyn Lawson asks, out of curiosity, how long do watercolor markers last? Would you say an 8x10 picture would run them out? I've never bought them, so I know nothing about them, but this intrigues me. I don't think an 8x10 would run out. I'm just going by the Windsor Newton ones that I have. I purchased, and I'd have to go back and look at my review of when I purchased these, but I'm thinking it was like 2015. And these are the old ones, and they're still going. And granted, I haven't used them a ton, but I've used them on several paintings, and I have some colors are just starting to go dry. So it's not like you're coloring a full, like just scribbling on an 8x10. Maybe if you took like an 8x10 and just like really coated it, but even then, I don't think they'd wear out that fast. But it's hard to say. There was a YouTuber. Oh shoot, her name escapes me. She does a lot of alcohol marker reviews. I don't know if she does water-based ones, but she would do a review where she would just keep coloring a page with a marker to see how long it would last. And she would get like 13 pages sometimes. So she would take one for the team. Wish I could remember her name. If anybody knows her name, pop it in the chat. But I don't think she did watercolor markers. All right, I think I'm caught up unless any new ones came in. Oops, I hit a button. Oh no. Okay. Lily CK asks, are these Lightfast like normal watercolors? Are they similar to regular markers? They are Lightfast like normal watercolors. And they are similar to other watercolor markers, but they're Lightfast. That's the big claim to fame. Gma Blackwell asks, are they thin and thick gray lines? Are the markers visual indicators of which is the chisel tip and fine points? These are actually brush and bullet. So if I open this up here, you can see. And I've dropped a cap. We've got a pretty chunky brush nib on one side, and then we've got a hard bullet nib on the other. So the hard bullet nib looks like that. And then we've got a kind of a, I don't want to press these too hard because they are fiber nibs, and I have a feeling they're not like, if you look at a Copic marker and they've got that spongy kind of rubbery neoprene nib, that's not the kind of marker you're getting here. This is a fiber tip. I don't even know if they can do like the neoprene nibs or foam rubber. It's actually neoprene. I don't know if they can do that with these types of markers, with water-based markers, but yeah, so I wouldn't like flex it like calligraphy artists do personally, because I think I would fray that nib. It's already starting to turn, like kind of go bent a little bit. So I'd be gentle with these personally. But you get a brush and a bullet, but it's more like getting a thick line or a thin line, but it is fairly responsive. Like, you know, I can have more ink, press more for more ink, and then kind of have it taper out. And then I could take my water brush, and I'm just going to actually dip it, because I'm out of ink on this, out of water on this one, and then, you know, spread it out. I mean, look, if you do it right away, it spreads out like no problem whatsoever. I don't think these are more convenient than bringing like watercolors to travel with, but some artists might find them more convenient. And then letting them set for a bit. Like the bullet tips, they're always going to be a little bit harder to re-wet. And the longer you let it sit, it could be more difficult. But even that, I mean, that's lifting out really well. And then our brush tip right after we've put it out, it, you know, it lifts right out, blends right away. So it's not the chisel tips. A lot of people don't like the chisel tips. So I'm glad they did brush tips, especially with these, because they're definitely more the feeling of a of using a watercolor. Okay. Grace asks if the markers have any issues with weather, humidity levels. Do they dry out more? I work in a basement, and most of my supplies live down here, so I really don't have that many issues with things drying out. But I'm sure if you lived in the desert, they dry out a lot faster. Oh, MJP said Chloe Rose Art did a marker. How long would it last video? That's not Chloe Rose Art. It's oh gosh, Hylila. I'm thinking her name is like Hylila Art or something. She does a lot of like anime kind of characters, does a lot of alcohol marker stuff. But yeah, check out Chloe Rose's channel. I wonder if she did these on one of those. Okay. And Terry Foster asks, what paper are you using? I've used these with cotton paper, and I've had a very hard time blending them out. This is the Be Creative, the I'm sorry, Be Paper Company 100% cotton watercolor paper. But I found them to blend out pretty well. And the cocktail painting, the painting here, this is 100% cotton Arches cold press. But Arches has a lot of sizing. The Be has less sizing, so you know, that will be a big factor in how well it will blend out. The sizing level, because if a paper has a lot of sizing, it's a nice barrier, like a slippery barrier between your paint and the cotton fibers, so it doesn't let it absorb so quickly, and you can blend a little bit more. So I would go with a higher size paper if you're having some issues with that. I think I will do a demo of the hyacinth flower, because I have it right in front of me, and then I don't have to think so hard, and I can look and answer questions every once in a while. And I'm just going to sketch right on with the markers. So we have a nice, you know, kind of a nice, I guess, true demo of it. I always run out of space. I have this whole huge table. It's like 3 foot by 6 foot, and I'm working in a little 1x1 square by the time I'm done with everything. All right, I'm going to start with some greens. I'm going to start with this beautiful, I think it's either olive or sap. Oh, actually it's May green. And I'll sketch with the bullet end, so I can keep a nice line. So if you're playing at home, use whatever marker you have. Another marker that blends out really well, or another type of marker, and they're fairly inexpensive, are the kind of markers that have the real brush fibers. Like they're like little bristles, like the Kuretake, I believe, made the Zig clean color real brush pens. They were the first brand to like kind of come out, but since then there's been a lot more affordable options like Ohuhu and Arteza. Color It has one I really like because they sell refills for them, and those blend out really easy because the nibs are actually like nylon bristles. They don't abrade the paper so much, and that's why they blend out really well. So that's really the things that are going to affect how well things blend out the type of paper you have. Is it well sized? And is the nib actually scratching the surface of your paper and creating some abrasion? And because if you damage or scrape the surface of your paper, just like we use the credit card scraper to do veining and things like that, that abrades it and gives you some issues there. I'm leaving a space so a little flower can poke out there. I'm gonna leave my markers out as I use them so that I can kind of grab the same ones over and over again. I'm going to switch over to this dark brown here. This is dark sepia. And again, I'm going to sketch with a bullet tip. I think this would be really freeing too, because if you're nervous about drawing, I think this could kind of alleviate a little bit of, I don't know, I think if you forced yourself to just kind of go in with your marker like this, then it would kind of break you out of your comfort zone a little bit. I'm just getting some texture in here because I know the bullet tip will be less likely to want to blend out, and it will keep some of these scribbly textured lines. And I'm going to do some roots. I'll do the roots with this peachy color. This is called beige red. This is probably meant for, well, I don't know. It's not like, oh, actually, I bet if you blended this out, you would get like a fair, light, kind of portrait color. I think I need some yellow ochre. This is actually quite pink. They do have some specialty sets, but I got to say, I didn't really investigate them. So if you're a landscape artist, you may just want to choose either a few colors or the landscape set. If you're a portrait artist or urban sketcher, you might want to look and see if they've got something that's a little bit more the colors that you would use. Because it's not a bargain to get all 30 if you're not going to use all those colors. I'm going to move over to, I think I'll use this nice bright pink. This is called Middle Purple Pink. And you know what? Maybe I'll sketch these with a brush tip because I think I can kind of actually get the little florets here a little bit better. With a hyacinth, it's kind of like a lilac where you have like a big clump of a ton of little flowers. And this isn't going to be like, you know, botanical artwork. This is going to be pretty loosey-goosey. But I think you could do a really nice botanical, especially if you like to do pen and ink and like pen and ink and wash. These would be really nice for that, I think. That with a water brush. All you need is your fine liners and your paper and a water brush, and I really think that you would be in good shape. I'm not going to put every little flower in. I just kind of want to hint at them. Let's see. I know I have a really pretty green here. Permanent green olive. Let's have a look at this here. Putting in some of these darker colors, which I will blend out. So I'm putting in the colors where I am, you know what, I'll take a picture of this, of the hyacinth. I'll set it up in front of a white area. I'll take a picture of that and I'll post it on Instagram or on my blog or something. So you guys can, if you want to try it, you can, you'll be able to grab the reference. My mom gave me a pink one and my sister a purple one. I should have taken some pictures of hers yesterday at Easter when we were together. It didn't occur to me. I did take pictures of my kids though, because I'm always like scrounging come Christmas time to do my mom's scrapbook calendar and I can't find any pictures. Oh, look at this color combination. Isn't that pretty? Just seeing those colors together, it kind of makes me want to make a greeting card or something. Let's see, what's this one called? This one is leaf green. Let's see what that looks like. That's going to be bright, but I think I don't want to put too much down because I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of color here when I'm done. I also want a little yellow. I think I'll go back to the yellow ochre though, because I've already used it. So I think what I might do is like maybe just take a strip of washi tape or something and put it on the brush end so I can see it a little more clearly because the caps are the same. And that would also be really nice. The stems are actually lighter. These leaves are lighter at the bottom than the top. That would actually be nice too if you go to like if you go to an open studio or you go somewhere where you're going to be painting with other people and you don't want your supplies to get mixed up. I'm going to use some of this. I don't know which one I want to use. Oh, I'll look at my swatch. Oh, swatches are handy, aren't they? I think I will use the Indian red. Is that what this is? No, this is sanguine. I don't even know. Let me see. Oh, no, that's the color I want. I might have to add some gray to this to cool it down a little bit. But we'll see. We'll add some colors and we'll see how it goes. All right. I do not want that brush. Actually, yeah, why don't I use this brush? This flat brush. And we will start. Oh, this is satisfying. Now they do lift more as the water kind of sits on them, so just kind of keep that in mind. You might have a little bit of a shock, you know, when you go back to the first thing you added water to, and then you see it's bled out a lot more. But it's only going to go where the paper's wet, so as long as you don't like wet the background or you don't try to paint next to something that's damp, you shouldn't have any issues with it going outside of your perimeters. Now, if you have too much color on your brush, all you need to do is just wipe it on either rinse it off, wipe it on a paper towel. Like I'm just going to just kind of squeeze some of that green off. This might be a nice option for somebody that like crafts in bed or likes to paint in bed. Oh my gosh, you guys. Jennifer Stay. I don't know if any of you know her. She's got the channel Coloring Bliss. And she did the funniest April Fool's video about coloring in bed. You've got to check that out. It's hilarious. I know I have some adult coloring book enthusiasts in my community here. So here you can see where the three petals touched and I didn't let them dry. See how they're kind of merging together. I can go back in. If I go back in though, when I wet an area that's starting to dry out, then I'm going to get a back run. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm actually going to keep the green on my brush and go down here because green and red are opposite. So it can kind of tone down some of the red in the bulb. And see, I was able to keep some of the bullet tip dark brown marks there. I'm going to try a really soft brush like this Princeton Neptune. Let's see how that does with reactivating the color. I like that you can get sketchy and then just kind of go in with a wet brush and soften it. Now the soft brush like a Princeton Neptune is not going to agitate the pigment as much and get it to move around as much as like the nylon water brush or a golden Taklon brush. So you may want to have a stiffer brush if you really want to get in there and scrub all that pigment out so you don't have the lines. But if you want to keep the lines and just have kind of a soft blush around it, this is probably the way to go. I'm getting some bleeding there. I should be able to scrub that out after it dries. So I'm going to try to leave a gap for right now. And I will take questions in a minute as soon as I get this pink kind of dragged out a little bit. I also want to just kind of spread this out so I can get a little bit of density in the roots, and then I'll just put on some, yeah, more roots over top. But there's a lot of roots coming out of the bottom of this, so I want the illusion of a lot of density here. So I want that color to, I want to have lots of color back there, or kind of like a blush of color back there to indicate there's lots of roots coming out. All right, so let's let that dry. And we'll do like a little landscape or something too, imaginary landscape, just so we can kind of pretend we're out in the field painting. All right, what else do we have for questions? Remember, if you are asking a question, post the word question and I'll cap so I can catch it, so I'll see it. Because sometimes I'm just kind of going through pretty quickly and the computer's a little bit away from me, so I don't necessarily see it. I did a whole video on paper, mostly for like paper to work with pencils and markers, but it's called All About Paper, and I posted it last fall. It's on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out. If you have some questions about paper, it's more along the mixed media vein, but you know, you get some information. Clark Fine Art asks, I love the tulip with the bulb. These are great. Would you be doing more for spring? Our daffodils will be sprouting before long. Crocuses are coming now. I think I'd like to do some more of those. Oh, you know what, guys? I'll give you a sneak peek of something that's coming up for free. This here, I'm not sure if I love this color combination, but it should be posted pretty soon. I've got to get all the information over to Michaels and Derwent, but this project will be on May 12th. On michaels.com/classes. It's a free Zoom class, live Zoom class, and then the replay will be available on the Michaels YouTube channel and the Michaels website afterwards. But it's kind of that same vein where we do the pen and ink, and then you can use whatever you want for watercolors. I'm going to be using Inktense, so you can use watercolor pencils, watercolor paints, whatever you want. But I'll be using Derwent products for this. And that's a lot of fun. And I actually did scan this before I added color to it. So if you had a waterproof printer, like a laser printer, then you could just print it out on watercolor paper if you wanted to, or you could just use the printout as a pattern for tracing the outlines. And then you can go in and do the fine lining with your pens. But I wanted to share that because I know it's going to be real close to the wire when promoting this, when I get everything out there, because I kind of got the assignment late. But yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Kind of that same vein as the tulip we did the other day. But I'm really loving the ink and wash as well. So I'm glad other people are too. I've seen more people do the tulip than any recent project I can think of, like people actually doing it and sharing it online saying, oh, I painted this. So that really gives me a lot of, it makes me so happy. And it shows me that that's something you guys like. Let's see. Arta Jewel says, do the colors of the watercolor markers match up with the polychromos? They should. I don't have my tin of polychromos or my Albrecht Durer pencils in my office currently. So if anybody in the chat could double check that for me, I would be super appreciative. Just see if the colors from the markers match the color numbers. They're supposed to. Faber Castell that's kind of one of their claim to fames. Okay, let's see, unless any new questions came in. Can you put down water and then apply the marker on the wet paper? You can. That's not my favorite application, Ian, but I will show you. I'll show you what happens. I find that the markers will want to suck the water up on the paper more than they'll want to put down color, I find, because I think the paper may be a little bit wetter than the marker nib. So actually, let's use what color that I'm not using right now, just in case it messes the marker up for a little bit. So I've just wet that area. Okay, so I'm going to start on dry, then we'll go over to the wet. It doesn't feel good to do this. I got to say, it really drags and it feels like I'm damaging the nib when I do that. I think the nib is kind of soaking up color when I do that. But you can. I have a feeling it's going to be harder to blend those out because yeah, it really just grabs the color when you do that, but it doesn't really, that's not the best way to get it to blend. So even let's try now. Well, you can blend it out, but it's still staining. And like with a bullet tip, look how dark the bullet tip is. It really stains if you go on wet paper with a bullet tip. The brush tip will blend out a bit, but it feels like I'm damaging the nib. It feels like it's going to cause it to fray. So you can, Faber Castell even says it on the website that you can do that, but I don't think I don't think I've done that with other markers too, and I've never gotten a result that I was happy with by doing that. But hey, you know, you can do whatever you want. I don't think you're going to permanently damage the markers unless you like fray the nib. I think it'll suck up some water, and then it might take a while to recharge from the barrel of the marker again to get your full color payout coming through. But yeah, you definitely can. I mean, they even say to do it on the website, so maybe it wouldn't even damage the nib, but just the way it feels like it's really dragging. Vanessa Alton asks, will you do a class or a class series on watercolor markers? I hadn't considered that actually. But I'll consider that. I've got a few classes coming up before that. I have 30 days to better painting, which will be, you can choose your medium, gouache oils or acrylics. I'll be doing 10 paintings in each for that class. And then probably colored pencils will be next because I did have a lot of requests for colored pencils. Christina asks, question, how are you? I am fine. Thank you for asking. The weather is beautiful. This week we're having sunshine day after day. So I'm solar powered. So I couldn't be happier. A little stressed out because I have a lot of projects going on right now, but not bad. Not like I was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I was like, I was really stressed out. Okay. Gosh, you guys are chatty. I'm seeing lots of a lot of chat back and forth, but yeah, but I guess you guys are all under control. Lily Chick asks, will you be able to use salt or other textures on top of these? You know what? I don't know. Let's see. Let me get my salt. I got some right here. I got some in the drawer where I keep my silicone tip tools. I like to go on adventures. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Work right on the back of this. All right. I think we're going to have to be really quick. It should work. I really think it'll work, but let's do some blues. See, I think this is good because I can use up some of my ink. You guys can see if these are worth it before you spend your hard-earned money on it. Hoping the back of this paper is also well-sized. Is this the color I used? Let's see. Is this in, yeah, dark indigo. That's the name of this color that I thought was, it looks kind of like Payne's gray. Oh, let's see what happens if we spray it too. Let's see if we spray it, if it goes like, that's kind of fun. But we're going to need to agitate that if we want the salt to work. So we've got to really get to make sure that pigment is not sinking in. Now, usually the salt technique works a little bit better on colors that are granulating, like ultramarine blue, colors that kind of settle out and don't stain the paper quite as quickly. So it will be interesting because all these colors are more, they're colors that would be prone to staining, although, you know, they blend really well. So I don't know. All right, let's see. Let's see what happens. And we'll have to just let it set it aside while we're doing other stuff. It looks like it'll work, but we'll set it aside and we'll come back to it. All right, let's see how this is looking. This is still wet. So let's do a little imaginary landscape and then come back to this because I do want to, I'm curious about that myself. I don't have a picture to go by, but I'm just gonna wing it. I think I will start with some blue. Let's do, I'm going to start with a little stream. Please don't expect much, guys. And let's have it kind of cascade off a bit. You know, I think I will want to grab a palette so I can just kind of scribble out some color because like on the sky, I really want to make sure it's not going to get too too harsh. Let's see, what was this one? Is this ultramarine? This is ultramarine. See, they're ultramarine. I mean, it's definitely not like your typical ultramarine what I would consider ultramarine. And I think it's because they're just not using, like Windsor Newton, they're not going to use the same pigments because they're so thick and chunky. I think they would be a problem in the markers. All right, let's take a regular watercolor brush. I want to mix these together. And this is one of my Craft Mo faux squirrel brushes. So it's a very soft one. It's not going to agitate dried marker that well, but it's great for holding a lot of marker in water. If you need to add color into a wet wash, I definitely would recommend that you do it in this method. If I go in there with a marker, it's going to be really hard to blend out. Or harder, I should say. Harder than doing it this way. Let's go see how this... I think I need a stiffer brush. I don't know if I personally would like these for landscapes too much, but I don't do a ton of landscapes. I'll do landscapes when I'm out in the field, but I don't paint too many landscapes at home. So could just be bias. I should have put more color down because I don't feel like that's rich enough. Oh well. Let me do some... Gosh, I feel bad. This is not very good. Something maybe a little yellow ochre. Yellow ochre makes everything better. Oops, I don't want to get those confused with what I'm using for the hyacinth. But like I said, I did find that these take longer than using just regular watercolors. Like I feel like that cocktail painting I could have painted in about a half to a third of the time if I was using regular watercolors. But then again, it could just be what I'm comfortable with. I wonder why this didn't want to blend out as much on this paper as it did. Maybe I'm just trying to cover too much at once. Yeah, I'm not really that happy with the blending on this one. I used the... What if the other side of the paper is better? Let's try something else. Let's pretend that never happened. Let me get a credit card scraper here. Let's start with a rock. I'm much better with rocks. Let's start with a rock here. And then we'll work from there. Don't get discouraged when you paint something that isn't making you happy. Flip over the paper and try it again. Well, let's do some purple. Ooh, let's do some scratchy details in purple. And maybe some of this pretty Indian red. All right. Let's make sure we agitate stuff. Let's let the colors mix. Let's get some interesting looking neutrals. I will not be dissuaded from creating something that is not a hot mess. I bet like a Kint and Montville would work really well because that's a very heavily sized paper. And that's very affordable. All right, now I'm going to use a credit card scraper. I think psychologically I'm not like married to any of these paintings because I'm like, I haven't even taped them down. So allows me to be very just kind of give up on them if I feel like it. I'm not happy with how things are going. I wonder if I could just scrape some of that up and oh yeah, you can just kind of scrape it up and move it over. Kind of like that. All right, now let's go back in. Maybe do that dark, cool gray color. Let's try this on the day because this is damp, but it's not sopping wet. So I think we'll go in with the bullet tip and get some of those details. I think this will work. It'll feather a bit. It's definitely going to stain the paper, but where it's not super wet, I don't think it's going to suck the paint back up into the marker as much as it would like when we're using the brush tip and we had that kind of puddle. Oh, I like that. Then, oh, that peachy color. That's a nice rock color. You can blend out another, like I just blended into that gray with that peach. So you can like use a color to blend out another color. Just scribble it off. Like I'll just kind of extend it over here, maybe make another rock back there with that peachy color. So I can kind of clean my nib. Or you can scribble it on your palette so you don't waste that ink and you can use it somewhere else. That's what I like to do. I don't like to waste ink, especially when I don't know how much is in these markers. I don't regret buying them. I hemmed and hawed for a long time. I've had these like in and out of my shopping cart for at least 6 months. And I've been aware of them. Becca Hilburn at Natto Soup also has a review on these. I think she might have a couple videos on them. She worked with them at some like event. So it would be worth checking out her video too if you're considering purchasing these just to get another opinion. Ooh, I like that technique. I don't know what would be the must-have colors because we're all different, but I do like that color. What one's that? Indian red. That's really nice. I like that right there where it's kind of bleeding. I think that's really pretty. Where it's just kind of going together there. I love my birch trees, so I think I'll just draw. I think I'll draw some birch trees. Maybe do a couple over here. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Just having fun in our judgment-free art zone. Oh, you know what? I'll take this bullet tip because I think it's going to be less likely to lift. I'll be able to keep some of these splotches in there, and I'm going to just kind of go in and put some of these little markings. I like that the colors are mostly really vibrant, except for that light brick. What's it called? Light brick red or beige red, because I think that those are really going to give you the most bang for your buck because you could add a little bit of water, put a little pigment down, add a little water, and then you're good to go. But I do want to use some of this in there because that's such a pretty color for birch trees. And plus, we're cross-pollinating our colors, and we're taking the colors from our rocks and adding them there. And I think what did we use? Did we use a pink or was it purple? I think it was purple. We might have used a pink too, but I don't know. I'm gonna see if I mix that purple with the brick red, if I can get kind of like a maroonish, not maroonish, but like a yeah, it's kind of like a rosy, kind of a rosy color. Add some of that in there. Oops, I totally forgot about that little tree. I know it's looking pretty sketchy, guys, but I think I can, oh, let's see if we go, let's wet the tree and let's go in next to where we wet it with the marker and see if we can get a good fade in. Let's try with that same dark gray we used. I'm thinking if I just go right at the dry edge, I'm wondering if that will fade in enough. Oh, it's giving us a pretty harsh outline, actually. That's not, well, you don't know until you try. You don't know. That's all right. I'll blend it in with a brush. It's gonna need some help. When I used to do art fairs, I used to take up my failed paintings and I would chop them up with a paper cutter into bookmarks, and I would give them away at the art fairs. This would be what I'd call a bookmark painting. Actually, I kind of like that tree over there. Maybe we'll make them some other kind of trees. Maybe we'll keep these as our birches and the other ones will be some random trees. In fact, I can just chop this painting in half and we could pretend this never happened and we could just work over here on those trees. Sometimes something will look good and you don't realize it looks good till after you've like gone way too far, and then you're like, oh yeah, that actually wasn't too bad before I did all that other stuff to it. All right, I'm going over the damp paper on the trees. We're just going to see how that goes. We'll get back to our hyacinths in a moment. See what kind of fine, if we can get a really fine line with a brush. That's tricky. That would be a little bit of a bummer. Let's see how fine we can get with a bullet, because I feel like the bullet tip is pretty chunky. You know, like I signed my name on the cocktail painting with the bullet tip of the cool gray marker, and I, tried to get as good of a tip as I could. It's not going to give you a super fine tip, a super fine line. I mean, it's okay. Probably about what you could do with a brush, unless you had like a really fine liner brush. But I'm not like, I don't know. It almost seems like it could be a little bit finer. I'm probably nitpicking here. All right, let's do. I was wondering if I could do like a leaf in one stroke, but I mean, I could do like a dab, but you almost, if these were like more like a bendy, like like a Copic marker, you probably could do like a little leaf in one stroke that looked more like a leaf, but I think I'm gonna do something with those, different with those. Oh, let's do some little grasses while we're at it. I don't know. It do some grasses, and then like where you want them to be a little bit thicker, you could add water. Let's try that. That's kind of what I was going to do with that last landscape, but it got away from me. It really got away from me. Oh, I kind of like that though. You know, you want to add some density like we did in the roots of the hyacinth. You just add some water, and then you can kind of like let the marks that you made do a little more work. Yeah. Okay. You know what? We're just gonna pretend that didn't happen. There we go. Enjoy my little delusion. That doesn't look too bad. I feel like that could be put on a greeting card and, you know, send it to somebody. Maybe not your best friend, but, you know, maybe your fifth best friend. They wouldn't care. All right, let's go back to the hyacinth. I'm going to see if there's any other questions. Jessie G says, so far, how do you compare these to the Windsor and Newton? I have a handful of these, really love them, but also sometimes want to try the Windsor Newton. Well, we can bring some of the Windsor Newton on this one. Honestly, I don't notice a huge difference. Oh, Terry Foster says, just try the Kinson Montville paper and it works really well. The markers blend really well on that. Oh, good. Thank you for trying that out for us. Let's see. Ian says, do you think these markers would be best used as a detailing tool in normal watercolor painting where there's lots of fine detail? You know, Ian, I don't think the tip is fine enough I think your smaller brushes are going to do a better job. I think you could easily get too much pigment down and have it get kind of away from you, in my opinion anyway. But you know what? I'm going to grab a Windsor Newton. I'm going to grab one of the new, if I have one of the new ones. I don't know if I have a new pink. What color is this? I have a alizarin crimson. I think my roses are all in the old, well, they're all the old version. I have Quin Magenta and Permanent Rose. I like the Permanent Rose color. That would actually look nice with this. It is the older style, but honestly, I didn't find the old style and the new style to be too different, although that one's looking a little funky. But we'll see. We'll see. Looking at my flower. Windsor Newton has a finer tip. You can tell that right off the bat, at least. I'm going to look at, oh, guys, our salt. Look at that. Yes, it works very well with the salt. Let's see. This is a Windsor Newton. Look at that. That tip is sharp. And the tip on the Faber Castell is more blunt. I feel like it's easier. You can achieve a pretty fine line with the Faber Castell, but it's easier with the Windsor Newton because of the sharper tip. Like you don't have to put much effort into it. But I just want to double check that with a brand new Windsor Newton one just to make sure that they haven't changed the tip. I think the tip looks, oh, you know what? That's a new Windsor Newton and it's nowhere near as sharp. Let me find another color and just double check. Oh, that's too bad. Well, they did ship Windsor Newton did change their production to China from France. That's, yeah, you know what? The new Windsor Newton ones aren't sharp. I'm just going to try another color just to make sure I haven't got a bunch of duds. And that one's already going dry on me. And it's been stored tip down, and that's a tip that it's been on. So, oh, that's too bad. If you had, yeah, about the same as Windsor Newton then. That's a bummer. Okay. Acryla with Bianca asks, would the brush tip be ruined if I used a more textured cotton paper? I think you would damage it if your paper was really textured, personally. Oh, I do like these old school Windsor Newtons for doing the detail, though. That's much easier to handle, but the new ones are blunt and more, they seem to be more absorbent or something. They're not putting out as crisp of a line. That's too bad, because this old one is really nice. But sometimes you can get the old ones if you have what you want to do is look for the ones that look like this, that have the stripes, the thick stripe and thin stripe on the ends. They're silver in color and they've got the griffin on there. The new ones have a smaller griffin and they've got the wave design on one end. So look for the ones with the stripes, and that's an old style one. And as long as it hasn't dried out, which, that's another risk you take buying an older product. But and I did, when I got the newer Winsor & Newton watercolor markers, they're called Watercolor Pro markers. I did have, my black tip was damaged. The fine tip on the black marker was damaged. So there's a little bit less quality control over there now. But I have no affiliation with Winsor & Newton or Faber Castell. This was just my own personal curiosity buying these products. I bought the original Winsor & Newtons, and then the Winsor & Newton Pro marker was sent to me for review from Winsor & Newton or one of their PR reps. And I didn't notice a big difference right off the bat, except for I just noticed that they were made in a different country. But now that I'm comparing those nibs right side by side in a painting, I'm noticing that they're not as sharp as they used to be. But I find this a very freeing medium, like a very good sketching medium. I think I would probably tend to use them more in like a sketchbook or use them small. But for that matter, if I was just going to use them in a sketchbook, then I probably would be better off just to use whatever. But it is nice if you make something you really like, then you don't have to worry about it fading. I like how they layer up, how we're able to build a nice amount of kind of volume and density here with like a variety of colors. I want to add some, let's grab, that's an old style. Let's grab the sap green Winsor & Newton. I'll use the new one just to be fair. And then this is the May green. I don't think I have, do I have sap green? Permanent green, leaf green. I guess I don't have a sap green. Okay, and the brush nibs on the Winsor & Newtons also seem to be a little bit more sharp in design. So we'll see how those fare against the I find, let's see, that feathers out really nicely. I like that. This is the Winsor & Newton Pro marker I'm using right now. I do like how kind of light and feathery that nib feels. Okay, let me try the brush tip on the Faber Castell. More drag on the Faber Castell marker. And that could just be the shape of the nib where it's a little bit less tapered. The Winsor & Newton is much more sharply tapered. That could be why there's a little more drag. There might be more surface area grabbing it. I mean, it's a small difference though, guys. It's not huge. Whoops. I want to put these on the wrong thing. I might damage. Let's try the fine tips together. And since this is the newer one, that would probably be a better combination. I like how the Winsor & Newton has the different shaped nib, so it's easy to pick, like to know what nib you're grabbing. Okay. So that's a Faber Castell. Oh yeah, my Winsor & Newton one is kind of I just dipped it in some water. It's kind of dried out. Oh, and yeah, this Winsor & Newton one, the bullet tip is it seems way darker, I think, because it dried out. That's not a fair comparison because that's too dry. And it wouldn't be fair to use the other one just because that one is the old style that's sharper, but I cannot. That one's also feeling kind of dry too. I don't think I've used them enough to dry them out, but probably just because I've had them so long. I need to follow my own advice and use my supplies before they dry out. I think I have yellow ochre in both lines. Let's try yellow ochre in both and see. Is that a new yellow ochre I spy? Yes, I've got a brand new yellow ochre. So let's try this. This is the Windsor Newton fine tip. Wait, this is a new one, and this is already dried out. And it was tipped down, and it's the tip that's dry. Okay, not loving that. Let's try that with the... Boy, this nib already feels soft, too. And this is the Windsor Newton. Let's try brush tip and the Albrecht Durer. There's more drag, but it feels juicier. And let's try the fine tip. The fine tips put out more ink. I think that the Faber Castells might be a little bit juicier. But then again, they're new, so it's so hard to say. I don't want to mislead anybody. Okay, so this would be layering. I layered like a marker over a dried layer that we had added water to. And if you're gentle, it shouldn't disturb the previous layer too much. But if you do need to lift something up, you can agitate it by kind of using a stiffer brush and scrubbing. So if you want to layer and you don't want to disturb what's on the first layer, go with a softer brush, not like a water brush, but like a faux squirrel, something like that, and just go gentle. I like that sap green in the Windsor Newton, though. I gotta say, that's a pretty marker color. I bet there's a lot of colors that wouldn't overlap if you really love this type of product, and you could pick and choose from each brand. If anyone's had recently the Windsor Newton and the Faber Castell markers, I know Karen Campbell was in. I don't know if she's still here or not. She was just mentioning that she uses both. If you can speak to how long each of them last, that would be really good, or any other comparisons. It's tough to make a comparison when they're different ages. They're very compatible, though. I mean, there's no reason you can't go from one to the other. I'll probably dry this one, this layer with the heat tool, and then just go back in with the marker on its own for details and call it good. You can spatter with these if you scribble them on your palette and pick them up with a brush. You can, if you spatter just plain water over your painting, you will get water drops pretty easily. They do lift up easily. They seem to have a good amount of glycerin in it, or something that helps them not seep in to the paper so quickly. Kind of want to do a few just kind of ghosty, lighter blooms. And I think I will spatter some, so clean up a little space in my palette. And I'll take another batch of questions, so if you have them, post them in the chat with the word question in all caps. And let's spatter both our pinks. There's our Windsor Newton. I don't like the Windsor Newton caps as much because I feel like I can damage the caps really easily. I don't feel like I'm going to damage the caps here because there's no sharp areas in there. You've got a gentle slope on either side. So even if I'm careless and I just pop it in like that and it hits the edge, it's not going to damage it. But on the Windsor Newton markers, on the brush tip, there's I don't know if you can, maybe I can catch the light and you can see in there. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but there's a sharp ridge. It's a ventilated cap, which I guess would be good if you had kids. I'm wondering, can you see how you see the light going through there? So it's a ventilated cap on the Windsor Newton ones. And if you can see, oh gosh, I'm trying to do this. My screen shows me backwards. So there's a hard, sharp ridge there, and if you're not careful, you could split your nib if you bang it into that ridge. And I don't like that about the Winsor & Newton caps. And it's the same thing with the Pro Marker caps too. And it's the same thing on the fine nib too. You've got that ridge, and I think it would be really easy to damage your markers. I almost have. And I think that's why one of my markers came damaged. I think it got caught on somebody caught it, or the factory, or the robots, or whatever that makes these in the factory. When it was capping it, it caught it on there. So you'll see we'll get some blossoms anywhere the spatter went, because those are still damp. So we'll get some little cauliflowers, but I'm not that concerned. I'm just having fun here and working on that. So if you got questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat. And I will say again, oh my gosh, you guys have been chatting up a storm. Let's see. Terry Foster says, I've stored my 5+-year-old Faber Castell markers horizontally, and they're still very juicy. Oh, wow. I didn't realize these were 5 years old. I'd seen reviews that were like up to 3 years old. That is really good to hear. I'm so glad for that. It feels like the caps really are secure on there, and that's probably a good reason why. I feel like they're easy because they have the grip and they're matte. They're easy to remove, easy to put back on. They snap tight, so I like that design. Brett asks, how would these be on a Bristol? Too sloppy? No, I think they'd be great on Bristol, especially if you're a rubber stamper, because Bristol is so nice for stamping, and it's got that nice slippery sizing that would let you blend for days. So I think it would be a perfect combination. Yells says, I have Letraset Aqua markers, and I've had them for years. They're still juicy. Wonderful. I have a few of those. Mine, and they were like the chunky bullet tip and the fine bullet tip markers. I think I use mine up, I think. Let's see. Kaomi says, I have both. I like both, but Faber Castell are better in the respect you don't have to rush to activate them once they're on paper. You can put the color down and wet it a couple hours later. That's a really good observation. So Kaomi says she has both, but she can reactivate the Faber Castell ones later on much better than the Winsor & Newton. So I hadn't realized that. So thank you for that information. I appreciate that. And I'm sure everybody else does here too. The Starving Artist Collective asks, can the dried out markers be revitalized by holding the nib in glycerin plus water for a few moments, recapping it and letting it sit for a while? I think so. I have been able to revitalize any water-based markers I've had that still have ink in them, but they've dried in that fashion. With the Winsor & Newton ones, I've just added water and been able to perk them back up. So I don't even know if you necessarily need the glycerin, but I wouldn't use too much glycerin. But the glycerin basically acts as a lubricant for the nib, so it doesn't pill the paper, and it also does keep the paper, it does keep the ink from drying out so quickly, because glycerin pulls water from the air. So that's why you'd want to use the glycerin. But if there's enough in there already, just water may do the trick. Okay, let's see. Zach says he hasn't made a Frugal Crafter live stream in a long time. Well, I'm glad you made it today. I haven't done a live stream in a long time, so I'm a little rusty. So I do appreciate everybody that's watching, despite that fact. Arta Jules asks, what kinds of salt did I use? Was it fine or coarse? It actually was pretty coarse, because it's the coarse kosher salt that I happen to have in here. Any salt will work, though. You're going to get bigger marks the wetter your paper is in general, but there's a little bit of a surprise element when you're doing that, but it worked really well. Probably because it's a pigment-based product, even though it would be using the more transparent colors that tend to be a little more staining, it still worked great. If there's anything you guys want me to try with these markers before we sign off today, please post it in the chat. And if you guys have some stuff you want me to try with them, I will. And otherwise, we've been going for an hour and a half, so I probably will wrap this up pretty soon. And if I missed your question, post it again. Or I know Yells had a question, but about colors being difficult to work with. And Joe asked her to clarify it, but I don't see the clarification. But I could just be missing it. How would these play with neocolors? Brett asks. I would not use these over neocolors because it's going to pick up that waxy surface and it could clog the nib. So if you use neocolors or chalk pastels, you want to use those on top of the markers and not go back over again, or you're gonna clog that fiber nib, and that would be a bummer. What is that green in the flower? I used these 3 greens in the leaf there. I used May green, number 170, permanent green olive, 167, and leaf green, 112. Can you mix the ends of the markers for a new color like an ombre effect? Would this hurt the marker? I'm sure you can. Let's give it a try. It'll probably stain it'll probably stain the marker, because you'd want to probably do a light to dark. I mean, you probably want to take the lighter marker and pick up the darker marker with it. So let's try it. Let's try it and see. What I would do, though, I think, rather than rub the nibs together, which I think could add a little too much friction to the nibs and make them wear out a little too soon, I'm going to take some of the brown there, the Indian, I think it's Indian red, and I'm going to pick it up with the brick beige here. So it's called beige red, I mean. So I'll pick that up. And then I should be able to just go until I run out of that color, and then my nib should not be permanently harmed, although it could be stained. So I picked up the darker color, and I'm just going to keep on working it to pull a gradient down. And that worked all right. I think a better solution, let's try doing the, which one was it? This one that I used? Indian red, I think so. We could just start up there with that red, and then we could kind of color over it and then blend it out that way. Now we have a bit of a line, but then we could go in with our brush. And merge them. Well, that's not that great either. I guess that's a little bit better. I'm not ready to be dissuaded here. Let's try something else. Let's try doing the red. And let's try doing the beige, and then like bring them together with water. I might need a stiffer brush. Well, you know what? I guess maybe the picking up the color with the tip, the first way is the best way to do that. I'm also working on the back side of a piece of paper, so that could be giving us a little bit of grief. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely do that technique as long as you scribble off that extra color. It shouldn't do any permanent damage to your marker. Nada asks, how would you use these with a rubber stamp? I would, well, there's a couple different ways you could do it. You could, let me see if I have a stamp handy. You could color on the rubber and stamp with it, or you could, stamp with waterproof ink and then color it in and blend it out. Either of those would work really well. Jill Bartos says, how many layers could you do with a Faber Castell? I'm finding some of my colors are lifting. I'm using Koi and Tombow. I would say 3. That would be my recommendation. I find that I also was getting lifting. Like I had a couple layers here, but it got so streaky I had to lift it up and let it blend back together. This is 3 layers here, and the final layer is just the bullet tip of the marker itself without blending. I would say 3, or you probably, if it's on a heavily sized paper, it's gonna lift it up. So yeah, they're very lifty. Aquarella with Bianca says, that's awful, lol, ads during lives. Oh, I didn't realize there was ads. There are ads popping up. Let's see. I'm using watercolor paper. And I find that like this was Arches. Arches was really easy to work with these markers. I wouldn't go any rougher than the cold press because it did feel like even the cold press was a little rough on the nibs. But any watercolor paper or Bristol would work really well. Oh, Kaomi says cellulose paper is recommended by Faber Castell. However, I've used 100% cotton without much issue. I bet they recommend the cellulose because oftentimes the cellulose will have a little bit more sizing and be a little slipperier. Uh, Corodium Hana says, I always do many layers of watercolor and it's fine depending on the paper. Of the, I'm assuming she means of the markers, or he means of the markers. I'm not sure. So well, that's good. I'm just seeing if I missed any other questions, and then I think I'll probably sign off. Oh, Kaomi had another hint. She says the Winsor & Newton ones dry more quickly, so activation has to be swift. The Faber Castell don't leave marks even after leaving them. However, the Winsor & Newton give more of a gentle watercolor look. Oh, good. So yeah, so pluses and minuses to both. So that's nice to hear. Thank you. This is like the best crowdsourcing ever. There's so many wonderful, wonderful tips and tricks here. Emma Falconer Art says, not a question, but I have the Winsor & Newton markers and I've used them in sketchbooks that are not specifically watercolor and they accept them just fine. But I have found the markers bleed through to the back and pill as well. Okay. Yeah. I think the pilling depends on a lot on the paper. If the paper has a good amount of sizing, it will tend not to pill. But yeah, if the marker is like rougher, the rougher markers will pill more. Like the real brush pens pill less because they're such a gentle, this gentle friction on the paper versus a rougher friction of the felt tip. All right. Well, guys, I think I've addressed all of the questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, I see another one. Fana asks, can these be layered when wet with dry marker without smudging? Can they be layered when wet with dry marker without smudging? They're going to, if you do it with a dry marker over a wet area, it's going to feather. It's going to give you like a smudgy line, and that line won't be able to be lifted quite as easily. So I don't like the working on the wet paper with the markers personally. I feel like it's damaging the marker and it's giving me a situation that I'm not going to be able to reverse if I don't like it. Brownwen Budgets asks, when did you start your channel? I feel like you've been teaching and chatting to me for decades. 13 years ago, I started my YouTube channel, a little over 13 years ago. And it feels longer. Just kidding. I'm enjoying every minute of it, but it does feel like I've been doing it forever. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will take a picture of this my hyacinth flower and post it on my blog, thefrugalcrafter.wordpress.com. You should be able to see the live chat replay if you watch the video again. So if you're looking to glean all these wonderful, juicy tips and tricks that other viewers have been sharing throughout the chat, you should be able to check that out. There's usually like a little button that says live chat under the video. And if you click on that, then it'll pop up either under or next to the video, so you can enjoy all of that camaraderie from the live stream. Again, thank you so much. Please leave me a thumbs up before you go. If you have a chance, if you would leave a comment after the video is in replay, that can also really help it get seen by more people. And if you have any questions after the live stream, put them in the comments as well, and I will check back and answer them if I know the answer. Or you guys can help each other out too. That's always helpful because we've all had different experiences with products. We've all tried different things, and we all have a lot to share with others. So I appreciate you. And with that, I'm going to say happy crafting and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.